Good morning. This is a player reflection session recap of last night's Symbaroum session 13. I called it part one. I'm not certain if Dell wants to pick up from the end of this and do a second part, or if he just wants to hand it over. I think we discussed it. Probably good for him to run part two as he's introduced. Dell seems to introduce the big turning points in the campaign. So again, the great thing about rotating GMs is we get to enjoy the game as players and GMs, and we get to enjoy each other as players and GMs, and we get to see. And Dell is every one of his, not say every one, but most of his sessions have pretty epic pivotal points. One of the fallouts of one of his sessions is his main character is no more, and our patron, our sponsor, is gone. And then he had another session. I think he had, I can't remember now exactly. He had another session. Oh gosh. So pretty, I mean, they were pretty people. And then the session where he introduced some potential ritualistic goings on under the major city of Thistlehold, which in a way is picked up in this session. So it's another good set, a great session, right? Unfortunately, David couldn't make it, which is sad. But so that just meant Dell had to kind of back up to, which actually worked great because David couldn't be there, and Malleus wasn't in the last session. As Malleus, David ran the last session, so Malleus is in Thistlehold, dying with a infection, a fungus infection of some kind that was introduced to him at some point in the Dabakar or in another ritual. We don't know exactly what extent this is. So we were sent off at David, Ansel, who can cure, or at least not cure, but he could save Malleus from the inevitable end of this thing. But we have to go to a particular temple in the Jazora barbarian ruins and get a decanter that has the magic elixir that would arrest this dying fungal takeover of Malleus. So David, that was David's session. We trudged off to the temple. We were able to grab that decanter and abscond with it. And that's where that session ended. And I think Dell, because David would have been in the session as Malleus, Dell was going to put us all together and start probably where he ended this session, I think, is where he was going to start the session. So he just rewound right to us leaving the temple. And so Todd and I, Bonner, Dell's character, and the bard that Terrell hired to chronicle our adventures decide to camp there on the edge of the river, waiting for the barge that took us here, the river barge that brought us to this point, the river barge that will take us back to Eanor's Rest. That then just makes it a day hike out of the Dabakar. We camp there. We discover some old tracks along the river of Andrix, which are they're in the Monsters Guide, at the end of the Monsters Guide. I believe they are a duck-like people that are river pirates for the most part. But among the tracks are also Ambrian tracks. We investigate and we kind of put two and two together. It looks like barbarians or Andrix had either been together or Andrix had them captive. And they came ashore where we came ashore about 5 days before us. But we make no more of that. We do uncover a cowl, a barbarian, a cowl and mask with horns, and we recover that, and we keep that. The barge shows up bright and early the next morning. We get through the night without any problems. We get on the barge, and we set off. Taro asks Ralphter, the captain, do you have a problem with Andrix on the river? Because we have found tracks. Is that what you're ultimately, is that why you've hired us as your guards on this trip? Because this is what we're dealing with. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, they're here and they're about, and yeah, etc. But, you're just, because Taro wants to know what he's dealing with. He likes to kind of have a leg up as a warrior, right? As a mercenary. Technically, we're not treasure hunters. We're mercenaries is what it's amounted to so far, which has been fun. Anyway, I take position at the aft of the ship and watch in case somebody comes up on us from behind or etc. And Cabello takes the bow of the ship, watching what's oncoming. and we sell a fairly without much problems. We spot a wreck, a wrecked ship along the shoreline. Hard to tell how old it is, but it's capsized and it's damaged severely, and it's jammed into the side of the river edge. And that's a foreshadowing, I guess, of what's maybe lurking in the river ahead of us. Later, we're bumped a couple of times along the river. It spooks us both a little bit, and we're trying to figure out what that is. The captain vaguely hand waves it off as well. There's lots of things in this river that could, cause this ship to rock. Well, shortly, a few hours later, we are grabbed mid-river by some giant crustacean, and it proceeds with its massive claws to start grabbing, decapitating, and pulling bodies into its gaping maw. Dell describes the claws, the arms and the claws of this thing, as it seems to adhere to the bottom of the boat and is using its arms to swipe and grab rowers and crew members off the ship, as well as trying to get us. But he describes these arms as man-sized. The claws are man-sized, and so Taro immediately, when he realizes the boat is pretty much arrested and in the control of this thing as it's tossing the boat, Taro screams abandon ship and dives for the southern shore, which would be the starboard shore of the ship. So we would then be able to just hike back to Thistlehold through the Davacar. So literally, Taro takes like 5 steps, full sprint, with all of his gear, and dives in, swimming for safety. And again, the danger of getting in the water is you, of course, are in the water, and you could be succumbed by. But Taro decides trying to get away from it is the only. We're not going to defeat this thing. It's manhandling the barge, and it's in one swoop is grabbing victims and dropping him into its mouth, etc. So there was no way Taro was going to try to stand on a barge and fight off these giant. So I risked the biscuit and dove in. Cabello orders Joran and Bonner to stay and fight. And so they attempt to stay and fight as Taro swims feverishly for shore, flips over on his back, and watching and seeing the chaos unfold. Can't make out whether Cabello, Bonner, and Joran, the bard, have followed me as I requested. Can't tell whether they're in the river or not. Can't see exactly who's on the barge. But at one point he does see Joran lifted up by one of these things and is fighting off being swallowed. He sees Cabello dive with an oar toward its mouth, trying to drive this oar into its gaping maw. Unfortunately, deflects off its shell and ends up sliding into the river. Cabello then starts swimming for the shore as he's been pitched into the river. Dell describes brilliantly as Bonner is lost amongst the wreckage and is just swimming in any direction randomly, as Bonner is not able to. Fear is driving Bonner. And we watch as Joran is pulled under, and we see at the final moments Joran's head pop up as he makes a death cry and is then disappears under the swirl and turbulence of this water as it completely uprights the barge, knocking all cargo free, and disappears, leaving swimming and dead bodies in discolored river water in a bloody cauldron. Taro and Cabello arrive at the shore safely, and Bonner is going downstream, clinging to some wreckage, and we start to sprint along the shore to keep up with him and yelling for him to come to us. And it takes a while for him to right himself, but he ultimately makes his way to shore, and we all, now tired, wet, soaked, and facing a day and a half hike through the Davacar back to Thistlehold, we decide to camp for the night here, and we go through the camp without a problem. And we ultimately were able to hike easily with Cabello leading the way through the Davacar and get to the staging area. And we can see Thistlehold, one of its beacon towers is belching black smoke. Something has gone awry. We don't quite know what's up. There's a lot of people standing about watching. And Dell describes the city streets. He describes it appears as if vegetation is growing from the sewer grates and is taking over Thistlehold, as if the Davokar is trying to take back Thistlehold. Very cool. He describes this beacon as being plugged or clogged up, or maybe there's been some foul play. Somebody's tried to destroy the beacon tower. But we're on a mission trying to get our cure to Malleus. So we go directly through town to find Ansel's a place abandoned. Ansel has left a message stone for us. We pick it up and it immediately sends us psychological signals exactly where they're at, what to do, and it's kind of a memory imprint on the stone that immediately whoever picks it up will get. But it has to be the message stone has to be magically imbued with that human being. So anybody picking up the stone would get it. It has to be made for particular people. So I hand it to Cabello. He gets the same images, and we both know immediately where to go. So we head down to the mission house. We can't get in; it's closed. We circumvent that around back to the back entrance, which of course is down toward the sewers. So there's a lot of sewage here. We make our way through a alleyway of sewage to a wall where Cabello is able to discover there is a switch that you have to, there's like a toggle, you have to toggle to open this hidden doorway. We get in, and of course the sewage here is blocked off. So we're now we're in an underground basement hallway for the most part that was concealed. And we trudge on in the dark toward the end of this, come to a wooden door, which we knock at, and Ansel opens the door, lets us in. We see Malleus's condition is worse. He's in a feverish fits of dreams. In the corner, meekly is a man of Krios, a priest. He introduces himself and begins to explain to us what's going on. Ansel administers the decanter of elixir to Malleus, and already we begin to see Malleus is calmed and he's feeling better. We're instantly, just the aroma from this open decanter with the candles that were lit give us some peace of mind and a little bit of pep in our step to Cabello and I. So we realize there's definitely some influence from the candles and the decanter. So Dell does a brilliant job of describing this stuff. And then they take us into another room while Malleus rests peacefully, healing, and they explain to us there is some cult. These are some kind of fungal zombies, and they have a body stretched out there that they have actually done an autopsy on. They've actually, vivisectioned and to investigate, and it is basically a human being that has been overtaken by this fungus and vines. Curl about the table, legs, etc., where it's growing tendrils and vines, roots, where it's basically got these roots that are extended. And they're draggles, which are zombies in this world. Draggle, they're basically, I would say, fungus draggles, right? And Taro, of course, very concerned about this, as we're all exposed. The city may be falling to this. We find out from the priest that they have investigated, and there is some kind of cult behind it. And Cabello and Taro ask a few questions. We get a little enlightened conversation. And that's where we close the curtains on the realization that Thistlehold and the greater Davokar may be, suffering a plague of sorts, whether it's intentional or unintentional. There is some kind of fungus plague that turns creatures and men into draggles, zombies, fungus-like zombies. And that's where the curtains close. And it was a great session. Very cool. So all he had really do was rewind us back to basically, as David ended it, us leaving that temple with the treasure. He just picked it up right there, and it was great. So the session became about us getting back to Thistlehold, which was perfect because David's character wasn't involved in that anyway. And Bonner is basically an NPC, but Dell can play his character. And we lost the bard that I paid Thaler. So there was a point where Cabello, said, "Oh, I'm responsible for this. I should have listened to you." And I'm like, "Nah, the worst thing is I paid that guy in advance, so I lost a 10 days pay. I paid him in advance for his chronicling, and now he's gone, and my Thaler's gone, right?" So Taro wasn't too attached to Jorand. He was, but clearly, fortunately, we were able to survive and pull Bonner and get Bonner out of the river. There was one note in town as we were moving through Thistle Hole during the chaos of whatever was going on, and we were completely, we didn't know what was going on. We just wanted to get to Ansel and administer this cure to Malleus, and we passed an alley where we saw Hulse, and Hulse is he is the kingdom's greatest messenger. He's all travels about delivering high priority missives for government, for royalty, for whatever you're willing to pay, but he is the highest paid, most expert messenger, Hulse. And Hulse has bodyguards that always travel with him. And he describes Hulse as moving very quickly through town, cuts down an alleyway with bodyguards and a skinnier, kind of clumsy guy chasing behind him. And we don't have time to pursue it, but it is. Dell describes it in such a way that Taro would take notice that Hulse is clearly moving quickly, and he's clearly, there's something about his demeanor that this is important stuff. And I got that from Dell's description, and I immediately said, "Bonner, follow Hulse, find out where he goes." And I send Bonner off because we're trying to get the cure to Malleus. That's it. Great session. Again, I love Symbaroum. Symbaroum. We could be doing this. We could be doing this with other D20 or any other fantasy games. Symbaroum, of course, its setting, its world building lays the foundation for how these things occur, right? It inspires us to put us in space, to make sessions with characters that lead to these types of things naturally, organically. And so I can't deny that you couldn't strip this. It might not have gone this way without Symbaroum's setting and world building. So having that foundation of what Symbaroum's lore is, and how Symbaroum, how the world is set up, and what the Davokar is about, and the great mysteries and darkness and corruption of the Davokar, and these cities that are described well in the book. All of this, these sessions could have been done with any fantasy game. They would not have happened this way without Symbaroum. So again, I've said it before, you can't cherry pick that, well, we could have done that with this, but it wouldn't have transpired this way, particularly if we were kind of inventing the world as we went, or if we were using a different setting, right? It would have been different stuff, which is, great. People say fantasy's dull and boring. It's the same stuff over. Really? I don't have that, right? Yes, you're going to be swords and shields. Yes, there's some limitations, but fantasy can be as broad and as remarkable for storytelling, conflict resolution, drama as anything. So how you play it, how you depict it, and whether it's always about dungeon crawling, it's always about killing the next big monster, then yeah, you're gonna get tired of that. You're gonna get bored of that. But rotating GMs has also been great because we are getting this very cool flavor. We are getting these different takes on this stuff, and we adhere to it. So if Dell, if removes Rigel, and if Dell removes his character Shig in this ritualistic metamorphosis of Shig turning into a world serpent, or Rigel one of them turning into a world serpent, whatever the deal is, we honor that Rigel's gone and Shig's gone, and where are we going now? What are we doing now? And so it's been great fun, and it stays fresh because we are rotating. And we're finding ways to our characters dip in and out of the conversation, in and out of the campaigns, because Taro can't be in the ones that I'm running, and that kind of thing. So it was great. We missed David, of course. I would love to have been. I would love to have been playing our traditional unit with David, but a real life gets in the way sometimes. So no sweat. Anyway, Dell did a great job, and he was, a seat of his pants kind of had to rewind a little bit. But again, veterans, we know where we're at. We know what the Davokar is. Symbaroum's core book allows for narrative travel. It doesn't have to be hex crawl, mechanical travel where we're rolling dice, checking charts. That's the hex crawl rules. So Dell did a great job of just narrating naturally, where we were, and then narrating time naturally. Just everything flowed naturally. We weren't questioning whether it was exactly this, exactly that. very, very easy, very comfortable play, which is true with all of us. But he did a good job considering he had prepared another particular thing. Um, but again, it speaks to why I liked Symbaroum originally, right? There were no mechanical travel rules. There was no mechanical pieces of actual travel. You, as a GM, were going to imbued this amazing forest and this very corrupt and dark world, and you were going to narrate this. The players would be in this space, and they would be player facing, calling their own shots, so to speak. I'm going to check. I want to look for tracks. What is that? I want to investigate that. Um, and so Symbaroum was built perfectly for this kind of flowing play. It gets more complicated when we're rolling dice for combat, because obviously combat magic, that's where all the mechanisms that are the most demanding come from. So I was pretty much in character the whole night. Didn't feel I needed to abandon my headspace for this session. I could stay at tarot, still in first person and talking directly to them, but also as tarot to Cabello, etc. And it was very easy in and out character play, which I'm generally doing all the time anyway now, whether it's Joth or whatever. When I first started playing, I wanted to be in a first person headspace, very immersed, and I think I've slowly developed the ability to kind of go in and out of that, which makes me a better communicator as a player with my colleagues, as opposed to a first person perspective where I make it difficult. It makes it difficult for players and GMs to always understand what you're saying or where your motivations come from. So yeah, it was great. And tarot, I mean, I've said, um, I'm a firm believer, D&D the same way, old school D&D. If you don't think you can defeat something, and the GM's not going to soft soap it for you, the GM's not going to fudge it for you, and the GM's not going to keep you alive, then you have to evaluate all combat as an opportunity. Pick your battles, as my father always said, right? Pick your battles. There's some things you want to stay and fight, and some things you don't. And Taro has survived in the Davokar because he's willing to recognize what he should fight and what he shouldn't. That doesn't mean he'll survive. It doesn't mean he'll always get away. But I was willing to risk the biscuit to dive headlong into the river and swim for the shore, hoping this beast was completely engaged in the ship and all of the easy eatings of the crew of 20 or whatever it was, right? And the captain. So Taro, I assessed the situation quickly. I'd rather take my chances and get away, even if I have to swim in its environment, away from it, than stay here and try to fight it. Right, especially the way Dell described it, decapitating with one swoop and snatching bodies off the edge and swallowing them whole. It was very Ray Harryhausen, man, and I love those films when I grew up. Ray Harryhausen, those old films where there were just times where Jason and the Argonauts had to leap out of the boat and get the hell away from this thing. There was no way they were going to fight Poseidon, picking their boat up, and so I loved it. I felt it was very Ray Harryhausen-ish, and heroes survive to tell the tale. They survive to be the ones to tell all the younglings as they grow up. I was in the world once and I saw horrific things. I saw a cyclops that we had to escape from. It was eating our crewmates. What makes you a hero is that you survive to age to tell and warn the world, warn the youth, right? Warn the tribe that these things in the world exist. And the fact that you survive to tell the tale makes you, in many ways, a hero. Experience, right? Wisdom comes from living. And so Taro certainly may not be heroic in that I'm going to stay and fight this crustacean, but that he'll be hopefully alive long enough to save Malleus's life. So for Taro is very mission oriented. I'm here to rescue Malleus, right? I'm here to do this thing so we can get our friend on his feet. That's more important to me than Joran, the bard I hired. He's a hireling, right? So I enjoy it. It's just great fun. And I can stay in Taro's headspace. I made those decisions as Taro, not as a player trying to survive. I made those in Taro. And this isn't the first time Taro has said, this is above our heads, run, and so Taro's story from his colleagues would be that Taro's the first one to abandon shit. Taro's the first one to turn tail. But in the long run, we have also succeeded. We have also done the things we need to do. And I think that's how I think that's how, heroes ultimately survive in worlds that are this real, this dangerous, right? So to speak. When I say real, I mean deadly, right? What keeps you alive is not super heroic, high hit point bubbles with feats and talents. You're going to have to know which battles to fight, right? So another great session. I told Dell at the end of that, you need to do the recap, but again, I know Dell's got to get up, go into work, and he's got a lot of busy stuff. So I thought I'd go ahead and do a recap. He can always add his GM recap and reflections, but I thought I'd do a quick player recap. Uh, uh, so Dell doesn't feel like he has to make a recap if he doesn't want to, right? It's a little easier for me up early in the mornings to knock this stuff out. So anyway, I think next week we're back to Joff. I don't know, Wednesday. If not, it would be Tuesday, maybe part 2 of Symbaroum or something else. I don't know. So we'll see. But enjoying it. It's been great. And everybody out there have a wonderful week.